This is a Sports Catastrophe production. Hey there, howdy ho there. It's Jeff Cutter and welcome to another Sports Catastrophe birthday boy. In the birthday boy for today, November the 9th, is a venerable baseball manager who started his job. He was a player in Major League Baseball, and he would become a scout manager, coach, GM, and farm system director. He would be on the helm of the Kansas City Royals and St. Louis Cardinals primarily as manager. And then, after that, he would do other stuff, a lot of stuff. He's responsible for why the Cardinals were decent in the 1980s. He was inducted in the Hall of Fame in 2010. He's still alive. That's why I'm doing him. He's 91 years old. He is Whitey Herzog. Now, Whitey Herzog was the second of three children and played minor league baseball in the Cotton States League. And he originally signed with the Yankees under a scout, Lou McCullough. Now, the problem is that there was no baseball draft before 1963, so thus players can sign with other teams. When he's playing in the Sooner State League, a sportscaster gave Herzog the nickname Whitey due to his light blonde hair. He is actually Dorrell. His name is Dorrell, D-O-R-L-E-L. Herzog would join the U.S. Army Corps in 1953 during the Korean War, and he was stationed at Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri. Of course, the war ended in 1953. But anyway, he was traded by New York to Washington as a prospect. He played for Washington, the Washington Senators, back before they moved to Minnesota from 1956 to 1958. Kansas City A's from 1958 to 1960 when they were the laughingstock. Baltimore 61 and 62, and Detroit 1963. In 8 seasons, he would only hit .257 as a player and 25 home runs. He would become a scout and coach for the Kansas City A's for a couple of years, and then he spent 7 years with the Mets. He was the third base coach in 1966, and then he became the director of player development, which worked out because on his watch, the Mets had young talent that helped get the 1969 World Series title, or quite frankly, the 1973 World Series when they almost beat the A's in the World Series. He scouted Gary Gentry, Wayne Garrett, John Madlock, John Milner, Amos Otis, and Ken Singleton. But Otis would soon be traded to Kansas City and become the cornerstone of the Royals outfield, and Ken Singleton was traded to Montreal and Baltimore. Herzog looked like he was going to be the Mets manager in 1972 because of the sudden death of Gil Hodges prior to the 72 season. But Yogi Berra was made manager. And he was actually ordered not to attend Hodges' funeral to avoid speculation. Logically, Herzog was upset with the owner, so he decided to leave and signed a 2-year deal with Texas. The team was in a landslide after their first season in Texas, moving from Washington. Ted Williams did not do pretty much anything right. He would get rid of the platoon system used by Williams and wanted to develop the team's young prospects. His first game was a loss to the White Sox, but 5 days later, he beat the Royals. After Texas started out 47 and 91 in 73, he got turfed. I mean, I would be turfed too. Billy Martin would become the manager and all that. Herzog would become California's third base coach in 74, named the interim manager for a few games. Bobby Wrinkles got fired, and then Dick Williams came in for the Angels, but he was 2-2 for the Angels. Then he went to Kansas City to become Royals manager, succeeding Jack McKeon. The Royals were in second place in the AL West, he didn't win the division, but he did help the Royals win 3 straight AL West pennants from 76 to 78. Meaning that they were in the ALCS against the Eastern champion. All 3 years it was the Yankees. Unfortunately for him, the Royals would always come up short against the Yankees. 76 was when Chambliss hit the pennant-winning home run in the bottom of the ninth. 77 was when the Royals had a lead against the Yankees in the penultimate game and lost it. In 78, I don't know what happened. He still did pretty well and all that. So anyway, Herzog was actually a manager GM for the Cardinals from 80 to 82. He replaced Jack Kroll as manager June 1980. He managed for 73 games and then left to be a GM, turning the team to red dice. But he would reclaim the manager's job the next season. And for 2 years, he was GM manager. He would help acquire or promote players who helped the Cardinals get to the World Series 3 times in the 1980s. 82, 85, and 87. There's a reason why he was well known. His style of play was called Whiteyball, concentrating on pitching, speed, and defense rather than home runs. It also helped that St. Louis had turf on their field for a while. Herzog's lineups consisted of one or more base-stealing threats at the top of the lineup, with a power threat hitting third or fourth, which was probably Jack Clark, protected by one or two hitters of lesser power, followed by more base stealers. It kept the payrolls low, and Herzog could win consistently with stadiums with deep fences and artificial turf, which both Kansas City and St. Louis had at the time of his managing both teams. He preferred patient hitters with high on-base percentages, such as George Brett, Hal McRae, and Amos Otis for Kansas City. And with St. Louis, he had Jack Clark, Keith Hernandez, Jose Oquendo, Ozzie Smith, and Darrell Porter. Anyway, so Whitey was doing his job and all of that. And he helped St. Louis make 3 World Series appearances. The 82 Cardinals took care of Atlanta in the NLCS and then had a hard series against Milwaukee, what they called the Sud Series, because both the Brewers and Cardinals were owned by beer companies, well, in beer cities. St. Louis did win Game 7 on home turf. In 85, they should have won the World Series, but a combination of Vince Coleman's NLCS artificial turf injury, which I covered about a month ago, and the fact that Dakinger was terrible. That was definitely a blown call. Of course, now we have replay. But man, replay would have been so much better for Dakinger. I mean, a lot of people hate on Dakinger. Well, the one main reason is because Dakinger was an American League umpire. If it was a National League umpire, it would have been weird. But yeah, the Cardinals blew it. But not to say that the Cardinals couldn't come back in Game 7 to win the World Series after that Dakinger blew up. But they did. They blew up. They lost 11-0, and Herzog got canned in the 5th inning of the game. It was thrown out. It didn't have the Dakinger was the home plate umpire in Game 7. In 87, the Cardinals looked good. They had a tough series against San Francisco, and then they had to take on Minnesota, which the home team won every game of that series. Minnesota using the Homer Dome, aka the Metro Dome, to their advantage, becoming the first playing the first World Series games in a dome and winning it too. Anyway, Herzog almost became president of the National League in 1986, back when the American League and National League had precedents to rule the thing and wasn't a unilateral thing by the commissioner. The role went to Bart Giamatti, who then became commissioner of baseball in 1989 after the previous one, Peter Ueberroth, got turfed. Of course, Giamatti would soon die in September 1989, forcing Faye Vincent to take his spot. Anyway, because Giamatti was president of Yale and then left to be the NL president, Marv Albert actually asked him if he should be president of Yale University. Herzog said, "You're trying to be funny, Marv. I don't think that's funny at all." Herzog would manage the Cardinals until 1990 when he would resign, with the team not doing so well. But he did good. 822 wins, 728 losses as a Cardinals manager. Add to his other managerial stuff, he won 1,281 games and lost only 1125. That's not bad. He would become general manager of the Angels for a few years. He almost went to Boston to be manager for the 96 season. So Jimmy Williams, the guy who helped manage the Blue Jays in the late 80s, was hired. Herzog got into the Baseball Hall of Fame by the Veterans Committee, and the Cardinals would then retire as number 24 in honor of that. Anyway, yeah, he's still alive, as I said. So yeah, he did pretty good for himself. WHiteyball in the 80s. That's what you've got to think. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do.